The morning the billionaire collapsed in a cemetery, the sun was shining. It was the kind of bright, golden daylight that made everything look deceptively hopeful. Birds fluttered between marble headstones, and the wind carried the scent of freshly cut grass. Yet in the middle of that peaceful scene, Arvind Hale, tech magnate, philanthropist, and one of the wealthiest men in the state, fell to his knees as though the earth beneath him had split open. Before we step into what broke him that day, take a second to breathe this in. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet miracles that change lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Stories like this remind us why compassion still matters. Arvind Hale had not always been a man who visited graves in daylight. For 2 years, he had only come at dawn or just before sunset, hiding his grief in shadows. His 12-year-old son, Kale, had died in a tragic accident that made headlines for weeks. Reporters speculated, investors whispered, and social media dissected the billionaire's private tragedy as if it were public entertainment. But no one saw what happened after the cameras left. No one saw Arvind sitting alone in his 20-bedroom mansion, staring at a bedroom that still smelled faintly of his son's citrus shampoo. No one saw him replaying their last conversation in his mind, wondering why he had chosen a business meeting over attending Kale's school science fair that afternoon. He had told himself there would always be another event, another project, another chance. There wasn't. After Kale's death, Arvind threw himself deeper into work. He expanded his company, signed aggressive deals, and doubled his net worth. Newspapers called him resilient. Colleagues called him unstoppable. But in truth, he was running, from guilt, from regret, from the unbearable silence of a house once filled with laughter. It was Kale's birthday that brought him to the cemetery that late morning. The sky was wide and impossibly blue. Arvind carried a bouquet of white lilies, Kale's favorite. He wore a tailored charcoal suit despite the warmth, as if armor could protect him from memories. His driver waited at the gates, instructed not to follow. When Arvind reached the marble headstone engraved with Kale Hale, beloved son and brightest light, he stopped abruptly. 2 little girls were kneeling in front of the grave. They looked about 8 years old, identical in every way, same dark braids, same faded yellow dresses, same scuffed sandals. Their hands were clasped tightly together, eyes closed, faces tilted toward the sun as though they were absorbing strength from it. A small, carefully picked bouquet of wild daisies lay on the grave beside them. At first, irritation flickered through Arvind. This was private. This was his son. He had purchased the most secluded plot in the cemetery precisely to avoid strangers. But something about the twins' posture stopped him. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't mischief. It was reverence. He stood silently behind a tall oak tree, listening. They were praying. Not the hurried, distracted prayer of children told to behave, but something earnest and trembling. Their shoulders shook slightly. One of them reached out and gently traced the carved letters of Kale's name, as if trying to memorize them. Arvind stepped forward, his polished shoes crunching softly on the gravel. The twins turned. Their eyes were large and luminous, filled not with fear, but with recognition. And that was when he saw it. Around the neck of one twin hung a thin silver chain. At the end of it was a small, wooden pendant shaped like a rocket ship. Kale had carved that pendant himself in his school workshop and had given it away. Arvind knew because he had scolded his son for giving personal belongings to strangers. Kale had shrugged and said the twins needed it more. The memory hit him like a physical blow. The girls introduced themselves as Mira and Luma Serrano. They spoke softly, explaining that 2 years ago, on a rainy afternoon near the old railway bridge, Kale had found them sitting alone. Their mother had been hospitalized. Their father had left months earlier. They had been trying to sell handmade paper flowers to buy food. Kale had bought every flower they had. Not only that, but he had sat with them for hours, sharing his lunch, laughing, asking about their dreams. He had promised to visit again. And he had. For 6 months, Hale secretly met them at the same spot after school. He brought books, snacks, and small carved trinkets from his workshop. He helped them with reading and math. He told them they were not invisible, not forgotten. The day he died, he had been on his way to see them. Arvind felt his chest tighten as if iron bands were wrapping around it. He had believed his son was going to a friend's house. He had never known about the twins. Never known about the kindness his son had been quietly pouring into 2 fragile lives. Mira reached into a worn backpack and pulled out a stack of folded papers. They were drawings, crayon sketches of rockets, stars, and 3 children holding hands. On the back of each was Hale's handwriting, encouraging notes telling them to study hard and believe in their strength. Luma explained that they came to the grave every month. They thanked Hale for saving them. They prayed for him because they believed he was their guardian angel now. Arvind's vision blurred. His knees buckled. He collapsed onto the sun-warmed grass beside his son's grave. For the first time since the funeral, he wept without restraint. Not the controlled, dignified tears of a powerful man, but deep, shattering sobs that tore through years of suppressed grief. The twins instinctively wrapped their small arms around him, as if comforting a wounded giant. In that moment, Arvind realized something that reshaped him completely. His son had not died as a lonely, misunderstood child overshadowed by his father's ambition. Hale had died as a hero in 2 quiet hearts. He had used the little freedom he had to make the world gentler. And Arvind had never even noticed. Guilt still burned, but now it carried purpose. Over the next weeks, Arvind sought out Mira and Luma's family. Their mother, Sophia Serrano, was recovering but overwhelmed with medical debt. The twins were at risk of being placed into state care. Arvind did not approach them as a billionaire with charity to distribute. He approached them as a father who had finally understood his son. He paid off Sophia's medical bills. He ensured the twins were enrolled in a strong school. He established a foundation in Hale's name dedicated to supporting overlooked children, those who sold paper flowers instead of attending after-school programs, those who needed someone to sit beside them and listen. But more importantly, he changed himself. He reduced his work hours. He began visiting community centers in broad daylight, not for publicity but presence. He learned the names of children in neighborhoods he had once driven past with tinted windows. He carved wooden rockets in his own workshop and handed them out quietly. The cemetery visits changed too. They were no longer shadowed by shame. He went on sunny mornings, often accompanied by Mira and Luma. They would sit together on the grass, telling stories about Hale's terrible jokes and boundless curiosity. The marble headstone no longer felt like a symbol of finality. It felt like a starting point. 1 year later, on Hale's birthday, the cemetery looked different. The once secluded plot was surrounded by small bouquets, drawings, and handwritten thank you notes from families helped by the foundation. The sunlight streamed through the trees, illuminating the engraved words as if warming them. Arvind stood taller that day, not because the grief was gone, but because it had been transformed. He understood now that wealth without compassion was empty. That time was more valuable than profit. That children often carry wisdom adults overlook. And as Mira and Luma squeezed his hands, he realized something else. His son had given him a second chance. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, share, and comment below. Let us know where you're watching from and what part of the story moved you most. Your engagement helps Kindness Journal continue sharing stories that remind the world of its goodness. And here is a special request before we close. Comment the word light if you believe even the smallest act of kindness can shine beyond a lifetime. Arvind Hale arrived at the cemetery that morning as a grieving billionaire burdened by regret. He left as a father carrying forward his son's legacy in the warmth of full daylight. Sometimes, the brightest lessons wait for us beside the stones we fear to face.